Okay, welcome back, guys. This is the second part of the distribution of crime, class, and gender and ethnicity discussion. I thought I'd cut my last one a bit short, just as I'd spent quite a bit of time discussing social class. So we're going to move on to ethnicity now, and we're going to go through the same materials, discuss a couple of key points, and really just flag up anything you really need to know. As I said in the previous video, if you've already completed the pack and you're happy with the content, just skip ahead. Don't feel you need to watch the video. Unless you really would like a little bit of additional guidance with the materials and obviously a bit of discussion with them. So we're going to start with page 73 and work our way through this topic. And it's only a shorter, gender's far shorter than class was. Now the first thing to flag up, as you can see on the screen, page 26 in your pack. We've already talked about feminism as a theory. We've touched on a few of these ideas previously. So these do overlap because we're looking at, and I suppose in some respects looking at victimisation. We're looking at the role of women as offenders, as victims, and how they're treated by the criminal justice system. Quite a broad topic. So don't need to write all these down. These are just some patterns, but feel free to copy a couple into you. Okay, so patterns. So the main thing to be aware of when it comes to patterns of offending, 4 out of 5 convicted offenders in England and Wales are male. 95% of prisoners are men. So very small proportion of offenders are women. Now women are often more likely to take part in particular types of crime, and it's often related to drug use or poverty. So women are often involved in shoplifting, prostitution, drunken disorderly. They are the common crimes women seem to be offenders of. Men more likely to be convicted of violent offences, sexual offences. Men are more likely to be repeat offenders. But female criminality is growing, and women only make up, as I say, about 4.6% of the prison population. So very, very large proportion of men. But because this topic is about gender, we are going to talk about both men and women. So we aren't just going to focus on one group, we're going to talk about both. So the 4 key arguments, the 4 things we are going to look at in this section. So why do women commit less crime statistically? Lower offending patterns. Why might it only appear that women commit less crime? So again, questioning the statistics. Why are women committing more crime than they used to in the past? And then lastly, we'll think about men. Why do men commit crime? Why do they commit more crime? And this will overlap with victimology as well. So why do men commit crime against women? So these are the 4 key areas to discuss. First of these is sex role. We're going to talk about sex role theory, which is in page 73 of your pack. Now, sex role theory comes from Parsons, who argues that there are 2 sexes in role, and this is all the way back to family when he talked about how there was the instrumental and the expressive role. There's these 2 roles for women and men in the family, and that was due to biological differences between the 2. So Parsons uses the term sex role theory rather than gender role. If you think about the differences between them, sex is about the physical difference of male and female, and that's biological. Gender is more of a social construct, and again, it's about masculinity and femininity. So Parsons is quite specific that this is to do with biological sex as opposed to the how social constructions of gender change between societies and how people can change their gender. But ultimately what he's arguing is that girls have the female role, which is the mother, and that should be home based, and they're about being gentle and tender and emotional. So that's not really in line with committing offences. Men are more the instrumental. They're the ones who leave the home. They're tough, aggressive, strong, and therefore that means they're in a position where they can commit more. Hyderson also pops up with patriarchal control, and again it suggests that women are controlled by men and by a patriarchal society. And the 3 areas that she highlights where women experience the most control is patriarchal society in public. Women are under much greater scrutiny than men. In work, where male employees and maybe bosses are more likely to be male compared to female workers, and in the home, where arguments and theorists like Oakley and other thinkers say that there is patriarchal oppression. Women are suppressed by men. So Heiderton argues that there is a greater degree of control over women. And even arguments and thinkers like Dobash and Dobash, who we've seen, are a good example that support this idea of women being controlled by men. Even think about some of the topics from DDOL last year. Ed Girl, Fallon Vogler, all arguments to show that men had power and control. As a research focus, as another example that relates to Dobash and Dobash, a slightly updated argument, is the study by Brooks, Hay and Lombard, which looks at occurring acts of domestic violence, particularly in relation to football. So when football matches occur, and particularly if a team loses, there is an increased chance of domestic violence, particularly associated with anger, frustration of the match, but also men trying to assert masculinity, control, dominance. So it's, as I say, quite an interesting updated contemporary example for you guys to have a read of. Other controls, again, we've already talked about, the fact that being parents, obviously they become the primary carers. Then we've got issues like the bedroom culture, which again reduces women's opportunity to commit crime, and the financial controls. So access to money, domestic roles, and bedroom culture. And we've already discussed domestic violence. In the workplace, sexual harassment and the glass ceiling keep women in their place, and controls their opportunities. And in public, it's issues like, we've seen victimization, the fear of being a victim of violent crimes. Statistically lower and less likely to happen. Young men are more likely to be a victim of crime, but the fear controls women. And also some of the fear of not being seen as respectable also has a role to play. And then last but not least, we have the double standards for boys and men. So, does the sex role theory apply to theories of patriarchal control? Are they relevant today? Is that still the case? Has society changed? That could be a good thing to question. These are modern theories that we're talking about, created in the modern era. We are in a post-modern society now where there's much greater choice and diversity. So, do these still apply? Are they, or even if they still apply, are they still as rigorous and strict as they were in the past? Has there been any indication of change? Heiderton as well argues about control and oppression of women, and we could look at this as a means of, this could cause women to commit crime. That lack of access to funds and resources could lead women to commit crime, rather than a way of preventing it. It could be a cause of it. And as I say, we've got the research I flagged up earlier, which is, again, I would encourage you to have a read of. So, class and gender deal. So we'll quickly talk about the class and the gender deal, and the work of Carlin. Now, Carlin considers, again, why people don't commit crime. Or women don't commit crime. And it's due to these class and gender deals that she highlights. So working class women are rewarded financially by working and earning money through a legitimate means. They're also rewarded emotionally through family and are made to feel happy and comfortable when performing their gender roles. So the idea being that women do not commit crime generally because they have these kind of rewards from work and home. When women do commit crime, it's because they may not be able to achieve the class deal or the gender deal sufficiently. So again, because they don't have that sense of reward and fulfillment, they look for it as well. A bit like status frustration. They're not having that status or that field, so they find other ways of gaining a status if they can't do it through the class and gender deal. So for most women, these goals are achievable if they conform to society's roles and expectations. Carlin found that if they're not achievable, women commit crime. So think about Hershey and the control theory. Those attachments, those bonds, beliefs that prevented us from committing crime. And it's a very similar idea that if women are integrated into a job which they can do and they've got a family, they commit less crime. And then there's the evaluation space, thinking about what Carlin is saying. We have double deviance next. So again, this is the work of Smart that found that when women do commit a crime, they're seen as a double deviant. Now, this is kind of the opposite, as we mentioned before, of the chivalry thesis, where women are less likely to be prosecuted if they conform to gender roles and the expectations of femininity. What Smart found was that if women don't conform to traditional gender roles, they are more likely to receive a doubly deviant or a double sentence or a longer sentence, because they've not only broken the law, but they've gone against traditional gender roles. This can be seen in cases like female sex offenders against children, or women who abuse children, or women who engage in acts of domestic violence or sort of murder, because these are, we don't associate women doing these acts. So legally, again, it's seen as more severe, more outstanding. I think female child abusers are rarer than male child abusers. So when one comes through the court system, it's a bit more of a shock, and therefore it could explain the double deviance that's applied. So there's some optional activities in the PowerPoint, which if you want to spend some time thinking about them, you can have a go at those. I'm going to skip through them very quickly, but again, at any slide, if you want to pause on it and have a think, that's more than welcome. So I'll just go for the first one. So application is Anna. So again, some questions there for you to consider. Application 2 is Janet. Again, the questions for you to consider. Application 3 and application 4. So like I said, if you want to pause on any of those and have a look at them, feel free to do so. And then we have the analysis and evaluation. So, why do you think women do not commit crime? And we'll see which one of these would be the most important reason for you. Why do you think that's the case? And then we've got move on to sort of halfway through that women only appear to commit less crime. So there are some arguments that women do commit crime, but it's often hidden, and it's only only seems that way, that women actually are committing crime. It just seems they're not. So think about all the sociological thinkers we've covered. How many of them, of the studies we've looked at, are by males as opposed to females? One of the big arguments about sociology is this argument that is Malestream. It's predominantly sort of full of men researching topics, and some of the older sort of modern arguments from feminism was that sociology was Malestream, it was male focused, it only cared about men and men's issues, and that's what kind of partly led to the development of feminism within sociology and within society. So we've had this argument that we could question the research because of this focus on men. We also have the chivalry thesis. Now, the chivalry thesis comes from Pollock, who says that we tend to act chivalrously towards women, more leniently towards women, particularly if they are conforming to expectations and gender norms and roles in society. And this could also affect official stats, that we let women off of offences, or we treat them less severely than if they were a male, which could explain why there may be lower levels of crime and offences by women, because they're sort of seen a more caring, nurturing way by the criminal justice system. So women are committing crime. That's the last thing we're going to look at on page 74. Women are committing crime today, and this comes from Adler and liberation thesis. So the idea that women have more freedom to commit more crime. And you've got the sort of task on the bottom of 74, which is a bit of a synoptic link, thinking back to what we've done in family and education, and what has changed and how that has led to women having more opportunities to commit crime. So think about family size becoming smaller, couples delaying childbirth, women being more likely to have a life outside the home gives women more opportunity to commit crime. Same with education. Women have more power, more status from educational success. So again, all these can lead to criminal behaviours or opportunities. So the next bit we have is moral panics. Now, I do need to send you a separate extract from a web textbook, but essentially this is the work arguing that there is this moral panic, this fear about female crime growing. So as I say, I will send this separately to you, but it's worth a read, and make some notes into your pack on that. It also links to Adler's argument. And then last but not least, we have male crime. Men do commit more crime. That is a fact. We know that from other sections we looked at. So some of the arguments we have is the male sex role theory. From Parsons again, we can apply that here. Men are the instrumental workers. They leave the home. They have to be strong, tough through socialization. This puts them in a position where they can commit more crime. Patriarchal control. So men are not subject to patriarchal control, but they may want to enforce patriarchal control, which can lead to, as we saw, sexual harassment and intimidation of women to achieve patriarchal power and to maintain their power. And lastly, the nocturnal economy. Now, this has been mentioned before. Nocturnal economy relates to the late night economy, businesses, bars, clubs, and women are less likely to participate. I mean, not saying they don't participate, but they're less likely to participate in those nocturnal economies compared to men. So women fear being a victim of crime, so they're less likely to take part in those activities. And then lastly, Messerschmitt talks about accomplishing masculinity. So men try to achieve masculinity through working hard and being successful. If you can't do that through legitimate means, you turn to illegitimate means, and that could be criminal behaviours to achieve your masculinity. Think about some of those subcultural theories like Miller and the focal concerns. It's a similar notion. And last but not least, the consolidation. So on page 76 there is the glossary of key concepts, which you can have a go at filling those in. It just relates to a lot of the keywords we talked about. Other things you want to do, if you've got that space on the page, you could think about the relationship between class and gender, how these two ideas are interrelated, interlinked, and maybe think about which is more influential. Is it class or gender when explaining crime? Okay, there we go. So that is gender summed up in a slightly shorter summary than but thank you for watching. Obviously, if this was helpful, put a like on the video. That would kind of give me a little clue as whether this is worthwhile. And what I will do is I'll move on to ethnicity in part 3 and just again work through the final pages of ethnicity. Again, a very short section, but again, it's worth reviewing. Okay, thank you for watching.